In the summer of 2013, Montana's close-knit religious community was rocked by an unthinkable crime. Just 8 days after a meticulously planned wedding, complete with a custom-written $3,000 song, Newlywed Cody Johnson plunged to his death from a cliff in Glacier National Park. His bride, Jordan Graham, claimed divine inspiration led her to his body, but the truth would reveal a calculated plot that began before she ever walked down the aisle. The investigation would uncover how a seemingly devout Christian bride orchestrated the perfect wedding, only to orchestrate the perfect murder when faced with the reality of marriage. The story begins in Glacier National Park, Montana, where towering cliffs and pristine wilderness mask nature's deadly power. At a spot known as the Loop, a 200-foot cliff would become the stage for a tragedy that would shatter a religious community's faith in one of their own. Jordan Graham grew up as the model of Christian virtue in Kalispell's Baptist community. Born in August 1991, she was raised in a household where the Bible wasn't just read on Sundays, it was lived daily. Faith wasn't optional in our family, recalls her mother, Lyndall Rutledge. It was the foundation of everything we did. After Lyndall married Stephen Rutledge, Jordan's world became even more centered around their church community. Jordan was always different from other girls her age, remembers a childhood friend. While others were dating and socializing, she stayed focused on church activities and babysitting. This dedicated image earned her respect within the community, particularly for her commitment to remaining pure until marriage. Yet beneath this pristine surface, friends would later recall troubling signs. She had a way of causing problems while appearing innocent, one friend would testify. She could manipulate situations without ever seeming to be involved. By age 20, Jordan had crafted a perfect Christian image, the quiet, modest babysitter who dreamed of being a godly wife and mother. Her work with children reinforced this image, though it also allowed her to maintain strict control over her social interactions. She was good with kids, a parent who employed her would later say, but there was something distant about her, even then. In stark contrast stood Cody Johnson, whose journey to Kalispell began in sun-soaked California. His mother, Jerry Johnson, had moved her only son to Montana seeking a better environment. "I wanted him away from California's influences," Jerry would later testify through tears. "I thought Montana would be safer." The move proved transformative for Cody. By 23, he had built an impressive career at Norman Global Communication Solution, where colleagues praised his work ethic and innovation with mobile operations centers. Cody was the kind of employee every boss dreams of, his supervisor Cameron Fredrickson would later testify. Reliable, creative, always willing to help others. But it was Cody's passion for cars that truly revealed his character. He could spend hours working on engines, remembers close friend Eddie Colan. But it wasn't just about the cars. It was about the people. He'd drop everything to help a friend with car troubles. This generosity of spirit made him popular in the community, where his infectious laugh and genuine kindness drew people naturally to him. Their paths crossed on Halloween night, 2011, at a local party that would alter both their lives forever. The cosmic irony of their costumes would later haunt their friends. Jordan came dressed as a nun, while Cody chose Freddy Krueger. Looking back, one party guest would later say, "It was like watching light and darkness meet," though we didn't know which was which at the time. Despite their obvious differences, attraction sparked immediately. Cody had often told friends he wanted to find a good church girl, seeing in Jordan's quiet devotion the stability he sought. Jordan, in turn, found in Cody someone who could bridge her sheltered world with broader social connections. Their courtship progressed rapidly, with Cody making significant changes to fit Jordan's world. He joined her church, attended religious activities, and respected her wish to remain pure until marriage. He changed his whole life for her, recalls a church member. "We thought it was beautiful then. A testament to true love. To outside observers, they appeared to be the perfect Christian couple." Cody's gentlemanly behavior, opening doors, showing constant consideration, seemed to mark him as an ideal partner. Friends noticed how he worked to make Jordan comfortable in social situations, though some observed her reluctance to engage with his friends. By December 2012, just over a year after their first meeting, they announced their engagement. Jordan's social media post showed a beaming couple, capturing what seemed to be perfect happiness. The community celebrated, seeing in their union the fulfillment of traditional values. The engagement period revealed Jordan's intense focus on creating the perfect wedding. She demanded all guests wear pink, selected every detail meticulously, and convinced her mother to take out a $3,000 loan for a custom wedding song. She was obsessed with every detail, remembers a bridesmaid. Looking back, she talked more about the wedding than she ever did about Cody. Warning signs began to emerge, though few recognized them as such. Cameron Fredrickson, who would serve as best man, noticed Jordan's enthusiasm seemed focused entirely on the ceremony rather than the marriage itself. "I tried to warn Cody," Cameron would later testify. "Something felt off, but he was so in love he couldn't see it." As their June 2013 wedding approached, the religious community celebrated what they saw as a perfect union. Here was a couple who had done things right, waiting for marriage, building on faith, following traditional values. No one suspected that in just 8 days, this fairy tale would end in a death plunge from a cliff, leaving a community to question everything they thought they knew about faith, appearances, and the masks people wear. As the wedding date approached, cracks began to appear in the perfect facade Jordan Graham had so carefully constructed. In the weeks leading up to what should have been the happiest day of her life, disturbing patterns of behavior emerged that would later be seen as dark harbingers of the tragedy to come. Perhaps most troubling were the threats Jordan made against her own parents. Just weeks before the wedding, she had spoken to friends about wanting to get rid of her mother and stepfather. These weren't vague expressions of typical family tension, but specific threats that alarmed those who heard them. While many dismissed these comments as pre-wedding stress, they would later take on a more sinister significance. Jordan's past held other dark secrets that began to surface. Cindy Plazer, who had known Jordan since childhood, would later testify to a pattern of destructive behavior that stretched back years. Jordan was what I would call a silent instigator, Plazer revealed in court documents. She had a way of creating rifts between people, of spreading stories that would tear relationships apart. Most disturbing were the multiple false accusations of sexual abuse that Jordan had made against various young men in their community, accusations that had caused significant damage before being proven false. The manipulation extended beyond mere accusations. Friends began to recall instances where Jordan had orchestrated complex scenarios to achieve her goals, often using her quiet, religious persona as a shield. She had a pattern of positioning herself as a victim while carefully orchestrating the downfall of others. These behaviors were subtle enough to escape immediate notice but formed a pattern that would become clearer in retrospect. Multiple friends came forward with stories of Jordan's duplicity. She would tell different versions of the same story to different people, creating confusion and conflict. Her ability to maintain an innocent facade while causing chaos was remarkable. She could cry on command, one friend noted, and always knew exactly what to say to make people believe her version of events. Cameron Fredrickson, Cody's best man and boss, found himself increasingly troubled by what he observed. He saw how Jordan would behave differently when Cody wasn't present, noting a calculating edge that contrasted sharply with her public persona of shy devotion. His concerns grew so strong that he took the extraordinary step of warning Cody directly about his reservations. "I told him something wasn't right," Cameron would later testify. The way she acted when he wasn't around, the way she seemed more interested in the wedding than in him, it all felt wrong. But Cody, deeply in love and perhaps blinded by his own desire to have found his good church girl, dismissed these warnings as mere misunderstandings of Jordan's shy nature. Throughout the community, whispers began to circulate. People noticed how Jordan's behavior shifted depending on her audience. In church, she was the picture of religious devotion. Around Cody's friends, she was cold and distant. With her own intimate circle, yet another personality emerged. These disparate personas began to raise questions among the more observant members of their social circle. Jordan's true motivations for the marriage became increasingly suspect. Friends reported conversations where she spoke enthusiastically about the wedding while showing little interest in the marriage itself. She seemed fixated on the ceremony, the dress, the photos, all the trappings of a perfect Christian wedding, but grew uncomfortable when discussions turned to actual married life. The wedding day itself, June 29, 2013, arrived with all the pageantry Jordan had meticulously planned. The Faith Baptist Church was decorated in the pink theme she had mandated, with guests dutifully dressed in various shades of rose and salmon. The attention to detail was impressive, from the carefully arranged flowers to the specially commissioned wedding song that had cost her mother $3,000. Yet from the moment Jordan began her walk down the aisle, something seemed amiss. Instead of the joyful tears common to brides, Jordan was openly sobbing in a way that struck many guests as disturbing rather than touching. These weren't tears of joy. They seemed to come from a place of deep distress. Even more striking was her persistent refusal to make eye contact with Cody throughout the ceremony. During the exchange of vows, Jordan's behavior became increasingly strange. While Cody spoke his vows with clear emotion and sincerity, Jordan kept her eyes fixed firmly on the floor. At times, she physically turned her head away from him, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the assembled guests. The officiant later remarked that in all his years of performing weddings, he had never seen a bride so obviously distressed. The reception that followed maintained its carefully choreographed surface, but undercurrents of tension were evident to many guests. The special song Jordan had commissioned played during their first dance, its lyrics about eternal love and devotion now seeming darkly ironic in hindsight. While Cody attempted to engage with his new wife, Jordan remained distant and distracted. Throughout the reception, sharp-eyed guests noticed Jordan's tendency to physically distance herself from Cody whenever possible. She spent more time with her phone than with her new husband, and her interactions with his family were notably cold. The contrast between Cody's obvious joy and Jordan's apparent detachment created an uncomfortable atmosphere that many guests later recalled. The first week of marriage revealed the full extent of the problems that had been brewing. Jordan's refusal to consummate the marriage became an immediate source of tension. While her previous commitment to maintaining her virginity until marriage had seemed admirable, her continued reluctance after the wedding raised serious concerns. Text messages sent to friends during this period revealed Jordan's growing panic. "I don't know what I've done," she wrote to one friend. "I can't do this. I can't be married." To another, she expressed fears about intimate relations with Cody, claiming she was afraid he would want to do perverted things. These messages grew increasingly frequent and desperate as the days passed. The religious conflicts that had seemed manageable during courtship now became major points of contention. While both shared a Christian faith, Jordan's interpretation of marital duties and responsibilities differed sharply from Cody's expectations. She used religious arguments to justify her continued physical distance, while simultaneously expressing to friends her disgust with the very idea of marital intimacy. Communication between the newlyweds deteriorated rapidly. Cody's attempts to discuss their problems were met with silence or tears. Jordan alternated between complete withdrawal and sending increasingly alarming messages to friends. "I might just jump off a bridge," she wrote to one friend, just days before the fatal incident. The growing tensions manifested in various ways. Jordan began spending more time away from their new home, making excuses about babysitting jobs or church activities. When she was home, she remained physically and emotionally distant from Cody. Friends who visited the couple noticed the stark contrast between their public persona and private reality. Jordan's messages to friends during this period revealed a woman in crisis, though the nature of that crisis would only become clear later. "I never wanted this," she wrote repeatedly. "I just wanted the wedding." These admissions, interspersed with references to escape and even death, painted a picture of someone unraveling under the pressure of her own deceptions. Cody, for his part, tried to remain patient and understanding. Friends noticed his increasing frustration but also his continued attempts to make the marriage work. He reached out to their pastor for counseling, sought advice from friends, and tried to maintain the gentle, considerate approach that had characterized their courtship. As the first week of marriage drew to a close, the tension between public appearance and private reality reached a breaking point. Jordan continued to maintain a facade of religious propriety in public while privately expressing thoughts of escape or worse. The distance between her carefully constructed image and her true feelings grew wider by the day. The stage was set for tragedy, though none could have predicted exactly how it would unfold. The darkness that had lurked beneath the surface throughout their courtship and wedding was about to emerge in a way that would destroy not just their marriage, but a life, leaving a community to grapple with questions of faith, truth, and the capacity for evil that can hide behind the most pious of facades. Sunday, July 7, 2013, dawned like any other summer day in Montana. The weather was clear, perfect for outdoor activities, which made Cody Johnson's early morning plans seem entirely normal. He had arranged to go kayaking with his father-in-law and planned to play golf later with his friend Eddie Colin. These were the kinds of activities that defined Cody's life, outdoor adventures and time with friends. But neither activity would take place that day. Around 9 a.m., Cody called his father-in-law to cancel their kayaking plans. His voice, according to later testimony, sounded strange, perhaps strained or hesitant. The reason he gave was unexpected. "Jordan has a surprise planned for me." Later that morning, he made a similar call to Eddie, canceling their golf game with the same explanation about Jordan's surprise. These cancellations would later raise red flags among investigators. Jordan had never before planned surprises for Cody, and given the obvious tension in their 8-day-old marriage, the timing seemed suspicious. Moreover, friends would later testify that Cody had been looking forward to both activities, particularly the kayaking trip which he had been planning for weeks. Throughout the morning and early afternoon, Cody made several calls and sent text messages that painted a picture of increasing anxiety. At 1:30 p.m., he called his best friend Cameron, mentioning that he and Jordan needed to talk about something important. At 3:45 p.m., he sent a text to another friend saying he was nervous about what Jordan wants to discuss. The last verifiable phone call Cody made was at 4:15 p.m. to his mother, Jerry. The conversation was brief, and he mentioned nothing about any surprises or concerns. This ordinary interaction would haunt his mother later, a final conversation where nothing seemed amiss, yet everything was about to change. As evening approached, Jordan and Cody got into his car and began the drive toward Glacier National Park. Security camera footage later recovered from the park entrance would show them arriving at approximately 7:08 p.m. Jordan was in the passenger seat, though she had somehow gained possession of both Cody's car keys and his wedding ring, details that would later become crucial to the investigation. The drive to the loop trail would have taken about 25 minutes from the park entrance. The loop, a particularly treacherous section of the Going to the Sun Road, features sharp turns and steep cliffs. It was not a place typically visited at dusk, and certainly not a location where many would choose to have an important conversation. Yet this was where Jordan directed them. These would be Cody Johnson's final hours, though he couldn't have known it as they parked the car and began their walk. The sun was setting over the magnificent Montana landscape, casting long shadows across the trail. The temperature was dropping, typical for summer evenings in the park, and the winds were picking up, normal conditions that would soon become part of a horror story. The initial cover-up began almost immediately after Cody's death. When Jordan returned home that night, she made no attempt to contact authorities or report anything amiss. Instead, she began crafting what would become an elaborate web of deception, using her phone to create a false timeline of events. The next morning, Monday, July 8th, when Cody failed to show up for work, his absence triggered immediate concern. Cody was known for his reliability. He had never missed work without notice. His boss and friend Cameron Fredrickson tried calling him repeatedly, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Growing increasingly worried, Cameron drove to Cody's house. What he found there only deepened his concerns. Cody's vehicle was missing, but his cell phone was in the garage, something completely out of character for the young man who was never without his phone. Most troubling of all, Jordan was nowhere to be seen and hadn't reported her new husband missing. The first official missing person report was filed that afternoon, but notably, it wasn't Jordan who filed it, it was Cody's uncle. When police finally contacted Jordan for questioning, she launched into the first of what would become many contradictory stories about the events of July 7th. Her initial account was elaborate but filled with inconsistencies. She claimed that after they'd gone out to eat, Cody had received a mysterious phone call. According to Jordan, he spoke to someone for about 30 minutes and seemed agitated. She then said she'd left to get a phone charger from a house where she babysat, and upon returning, saw Cody leaving in a dark-colored car with Washington state license plates. To bolster this story, Jordan claimed she had received a text message from Cody after he left. However, when investigators asked to see this message, she said she and Cody had a habit of deleting texts after reading them, a claim that would later be proven false through phone records. Perhaps the most calculated aspect of the cover-up came in the form of an email Jordan created and sent to herself. Using a computer at her parents' house, she created a fake email account under the name Tony, @gmail.com. The email, which she later showed to police, claimed that Cody had gone out with friends to Columbia Falls, visited the woods, and accidentally fallen from a cliff while hiking. The detail and specificity of the email was striking. Tony claimed to have seen Jordan's missing person posts on social media and wanted to help provide closure. The email explained why no one should bother searching for Cody anymore, conveniently suggesting that authorities should call off their investigation. This elaborate deception would later be traced back to the IP address at Jordan's family home. As police involvement intensified, Jordan's stories began to multiply and contradict each other. To some friends, she claimed Cody had left her. To others, she suggested he might be having an affair. To police, she maintained the story about the mysterious dark car with Washington plates. Each new version added layers of complexity to what was becoming an obviously manufactured cover-up. The search efforts began in earnest on July 9th, with local law enforcement coordinating with park rangers to comb through the most popular areas of Glacier National Park. Jordan participated in these searches, but her behavior struck many participants as odd. While others were deeply concerned and focused, she seemed almost casual, playing music in her car and appearing more interested in social media than finding her husband. The discovery of Cody's body came on July 11th, in a manner that would later raise serious questions about Jordan's involvement. During a search of the park, Jordan suddenly insisted on checking the loop area. Her behavior shifted dramatically. She appeared to enter what witnesses described as an almost trance-like state, moving with unexpected purpose toward a specific viewing area. In what seemed like an impossibly fortunate, or suspicious, coincidence, Jordan walked directly to a spot overlooking a steep cliff and immediately located Cody's body in the terrain below. When questioned about how she knew to look in that specific location, Jordan claimed she had received divine inspiration from the Holy Spirit, a claim that would later be viewed with considerable skepticism by investigators. The spot where Cody's body was found was not easily accessible. It lay at the bottom of a nearly 200-foot cliff in an area park rangers described as treacherous and seldom visited. The recovery operation required specialized equipment and a helicopter due to the difficult terrain. The body was located in a position that suggested a forward fall, face first off the cliff, a detail that would become significant in the investigation. As recovery teams worked to retrieve Cody's body, investigators began gathering crucial evidence from the scene. Among the most significant findings was a black cloth discovered near the body, which contained several strands of Cody's hair. This piece of evidence would later suggest the possibility that Cody had been blindfolded before his death. The initial examination of the body revealed several telling details. Cody's wedding ring was missing, despite the fact that friends said he had never taken it off since the ceremony. There were also signs of a forward-facing impact, consistent with being pushed rather than accidentally falling or jumping. The positioning of the body and the pattern of injuries would later become crucial elements in the prosecution's case. Forensic teams carefully documented the scene, collecting physical evidence that included soil samples, fiber evidence, and photographs of the terrain. They noted that the spot where Cody apparently fell was actually several feet out from the cliff face, a detail that seemed inconsistent with an accidental fall or suicide. The investigation team also recovered surveillance footage from the park's entrance gates, which clearly showed Jordan and Cody entering the park together that evening. This directly contradicted her initial story about him leaving in a dark car with Washington plates. Cell phone tower data would later confirm that both their phones had been in the park that evening, further dismantling Jordan's elaborate cover story. As the evidence mounted, investigators began to piece together a timeline that differed dramatically from any of the versions Jordan had provided. The physical evidence, combined with witness statements and electronic data, painted a picture of premeditation rather than accident or impulse. The recovery of the black cloth with Cody's hair, the missing wedding ring, and Jordan's inexplicable ability to lead searchers directly to the body all pointed toward a carefully planned act rather than a tragic mishap. The discovery phase of the investigation concluded with a grim certainty. Cody Johnson's death was no accident. The evidence pointed to a deliberate act, carefully planned and executed, followed by an elaborate but ultimately unsuccessful attempt to cover up the truth. The case was about to move from a missing person investigation to a murder inquiry, with Jordan Graham squarely in the investigators' crosshairs. The investigation into Cody Johnson's death shifted dramatically as evidence began mounting against Jordan Graham. Surveillance footage from Glacier National Park proved to be a crucial turning point. The crystal-clear images showed Jordan and Cody entering the park together in his car on July 7, directly contradicting her story about the mysterious dark vehicle with Washington plates. More telling was the footage of Jordan leaving the park alone, driving Cody's car with an eerily calm demeanor. FBI analysts meticulously reconstructed cell phone records that painted a damning timeline. Both phones had ping towers near the loop trail around the estimated time of death. Jordan's phone showed a pattern of frantic text messages to friends in the days leading up to the incident, including one particularly chilling message sent hours before. "If you don't hear from me tonight, something happened." The investigation team interviewed dozens of witnesses, each adding another piece to the puzzle. Co-workers described Cody's unusual cancellation of plans that Sunday. Friends recounted Jordan's strange behavior at the wedding and during the subsequent search efforts. Park rangers noted how the location where Cody's body was found was not commonly visited, especially at dusk, raising questions about why the couple had gone there. Physical evidence from the crime scene proved particularly damning. The black cloth found near Cody's body contained not only his hair but also fibers matching Jordan's clothing from that night. Forensic analysis of the cliff edge showed signs of a struggle, with scuff marks indicating someone had been pushed rather than fallen accidentally. The missing wedding ring was never found, though investigators discovered Jordan had asked Cody to remove it earlier that day for what she claimed was safekeeping. Behavioral analysts who reviewed Jordan's interviews and actions noted several red flags. Her effect remained flat when discussing her husband's death, showing more animation when talking about wedding details than when recounting finding his body. She exhibited what experts called distancing language when speaking about Cody, rarely using his name and speaking about him in the past tense even before his body was found. As investigators dug deeper, darker aspects of Jordan's past began emerging. Former friends came forward with disturbing stories of manipulation and deception. The threats she had made against her parents weeks before the wedding took on new significance. One friend revealed Jordan had spoken about wanting to get rid of her mother and stepfather, describing specific scenarios that showed disturbing premeditation. A pattern of lies throughout her life became evident. Multiple individuals testified about false accusations she had made, including several allegations of sexual abuse that had been proven untrue. These weren't simple misunderstandings but elaborate fabrications that had caused serious harm to the accused. Each incident showed a similar pattern: careful planning, convincing performance, and a complete lack of remorse when exposed. Friends who had known Jordan since childhood painted a picture of a masterful manipulator. They described how she would pit people against each other, create drama, then position herself as the innocent victim. Cindy Plaza's testimony was particularly powerful, detailing years of witnessed manipulation and false accusations. Jordan had a way, Plaza testified, of destroying relationships while maintaining her innocent facade. Family discoveries proved equally troubling. Jordan's half-brother revealed how she had asked him to lie to investigators about finding Cody's body. Her mother admitted to helping create the fake Tony email, though she claimed she didn't know its intended purpose. Even Jordan's religious devotion was called into question, with church members recalling instances of her using faith to manipulate situations to her advantage. Additional evidence continued to surface. Investigators discovered Jordan had researched the park's terrain extensively before the incident. Her internet history showed searches about cliff heights and survival rates from falls. She had also made inquiries about Cody's life insurance policy, though she claimed this was unrelated to his death. The legal proceedings began with Jordan's arrest on charges of second-degree murder and making false statements to authorities. The evidence was so compelling that these charges were later upgraded to first-degree murder by a grand jury. Jordan's initial court appearance showcased her now familiar emotional distance, as she appeared more concerned with her appearance than the gravity of the charges. As the case moved forward, Jordan's defense team attempted to portray her as a naive, socially awkward young woman who had acted impulsively during a marital dispute. This narrative quickly unraveled under the weight of evidence suggesting premeditation. The discovery of the black cloth, the research into the location, and the elaborate cover-up attempts all pointed to careful planning. The prosecution's case was strengthened by Jordan's multiple contradictory statements to investigators. Each lie she had told was methodically exposed, from the fictional dark car to the fabricated text messages. The fake email from Tony proved particularly damaging, demonstrating a calculated attempt to misdirect the investigation. Faced with mounting evidence, Jordan accepted a plea deal in December 2013. She agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for dropping the first-degree murder charge and the charge of making false statements. The deal came as the jury was about to begin deliberations, suggesting Jordan and her legal team recognized the likelihood of conviction on all charges. The sentencing hearing in March 2014 proved emotionally charged. Impact statements from Cody's family revealed the devastating effects of his murder. His mother, Cody Johnson, spoke about moving to Montana to provide a safer life for her only son, only to have him taken in such a brutal way. She described her shattered dreams of grandchildren and her ongoing nightmare of knowing her son's final moments were filled with betrayal. Jordan's own statement at sentencing showed little genuine remorse. She spoke about being in shock during the incident but offered no real explanation or apology for her actions. The judge noted her continued lack of emotion and failure to take full responsibility for her actions. The final judgment came down heavily. Judge Donald Mallory sentenced Jordan to 30 years in prison without possibility of parole, followed by 5 years of supervised release. He ordered her to pay $17,000 in restitution and undergo psychiatric treatment. The judge's comments were particularly scathing, noting Jordan's persistent lies and complete lack of remorse. The verdict brought some closure to Cody's family and friends, though many questions remained unanswered. Jordan's true motives, the full extent of her planning, and the details of Cody's final moments would remain largely unknown. The case stood as a chilling reminder of how appearances could be deceiving, and how religious devotion could be used as a mask for darker intentions. The final chapter of Jordan Graham's case unfolded in a packed Montana courtroom in March 2014. Judge Donald Mallory's courtroom fell silent as he prepared to deliver the sentence that would bring some measure of closure to a case that had shaken the community to its core. Before announcing his decision, Judge Mallory addressed Jordan directly, his words cutting through her carefully maintained facade of indifference. "You show no remorse," the judge observed, his voice heavy with disapproval. "And you show no real concern for what you did to Cody, his family, or even your own family." He noted that throughout the proceedings, Jordan had shown more emotion when discussing wedding details than when describing her husband's death. The judge's most damning observation came when he addressed Jordan's numerous lies. "I kept waiting for you to say you were sorry for killing Cody. But all I heard was your excuse that you were confused." The sentence was decisive: 30 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole, followed by 5 years of supervised release. Additional conditions included mandatory psychiatric treatment and a prohibition against profiting from the crime through books or media deals. The judge also ordered Jordan to pay $17,000 in restitution for the costs of recovering Cody's body from the cliff. The victim impact statements delivered during sentencing painted a devastating picture of loss. Cody Johnson, Cody's mother, spoke through tears about her decision to move to Montana for a safer life for her son. "I came here to protect him," she said, "but I couldn't protect him from her." She described her shattered dreams of grandchildren and her ongoing struggle to understand how the woman who had promised to love her son could so callously take his life. Throughout these emotional testimonies, Jordan remained stoic, her face showing little reaction to the pain she had caused. When given the opportunity to speak, her statement focused more on her own confusion and panic than on any genuine remorse for her actions. This final display of emotional detachment only served to reinforce the judge's assessment of her character. The impact of the case on both families has been profound and lasting. Cody's mother, Jerry, has spoken publicly about her ongoing struggle with grief and the additional pain caused by Jordan's continued lack of remorse. The Johnson family has worked to keep Cody's memory alive while grappling with the senseless nature of his death. Jordan's family has faced their own form of trauma. Her mother, Lyndall, who had taken out a loan for the wedding song, now lives with the knowledge that she unwittingly helped finance what would become part of her daughter's deadly deception. Jordan's half-brother, forced to lie about the discovery of Cody's body, carries the burden of his involvement in the cover-up. The religious community that had celebrated the couple's wedding was left to question their judgment and faith. The Faith Baptist Church, where Jordan had been a respected member and where the couple had exchanged their vows, struggled to reconcile their image of the quiet, devout young woman with the calculated killer she proved to be. Questions continue to haunt those involved in the case. Why did Jordan go through with the wedding if she had no intention of being married? What really happened in those final moments on the cliff? The full truth may never be known, as Jordan maintains her story of panic and impulse despite evidence suggesting premeditation. The case has left a lasting legacy in the legal community, particularly regarding how religious devotion can be used as a cover for criminal intent. It has become a cautionary tale about the dangers of accepting surface appearances and the importance of heeding warning signs in relationships. Today, Jordan Graham serves her sentence in a federal prison, her appeals having been rejected. The special wedding song she commissioned, meant to celebrate eternal love, stands as a haunting reminder of her deception. Cody's family has established a memorial scholarship in his name, focusing on supporting students interested in automotive technology, his passion in life. Glacier National Park visitors who pass the loop trail often unknowingly traverse the site of this tragedy. Park rangers note that while the location's natural beauty remains unchanged, it carries an additional weight of history now, a reminder of how beauty and danger often coexist. The case has become a reference point in discussions about domestic violence and hidden psychological abuse. Experts point to Jordan's behavior as a textbook example of how manipulative personalities can hide behind socially acceptable facades, particularly within religious communities. For those who knew Cody, his memory lives on through the positive impact he had on others. Friends continue to share stories of his kindness, his passion for cars, and his genuine desire to help others. His mother has become an advocate for domestic violence awareness, turning her personal tragedy into a mission to help others recognize warning signs she wishes she had seen. The ultimate significance of the case lies perhaps in its reminder that evil often wears a benign face, that the most dangerous deceptions can hide behind the most trusted institutions, and that justice, while it may not heal all wounds, can at least provide a foundation for healing to begin.